Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Lunch and Learn from NAMI Johnson County. My name is Joanna. I'm the president of the board of our Johnson County NAMI affiliate. Welcome. Today we have a special guest. He is Christopher Cruz. He's a victim witness coordinator with the Johnson County Attorney's Office, bringing over 9 years of experience and expertise in victim services. He began his career working directly with survivors of violent crimes and homicides at a local crisis advocacy center. He's drawn to victim services because of a personal experience that solidified his dedication to ensuring no one has to navigate the aftermath of trauma alone. With a background in criminal justice, Chris has dedicated himself to ensuring that victims have access to the services and resources available to help them regain a sense of safety and well-being, and to inform them about their rights throughout the criminal justice process. So welcome, Chris. Everyone, we can take questions in the chat, and I'll help you navigate those, Chris, or you can wait until the end, whatever you're most comfortable
I
with.
am comfortable either way.
Okay.
Well, thank you everybody for having me today. I always feel like this is a great opportunity to illustrate not only one's background and the job that we do and trauma, but also illustrate the person's background of why they even got into this type of job. And I guess to explain a little bit of how I got here, I grew up in California, and in California, we're very, very poor, and we were sometimes homeless, and we depended on food stamps. And also, I also helped my mom, pick up cans. And sometimes we would put little rocks in it to have them weigh more. So you get more money. And so we're able to buy things. And so my journey into getting to where I'm at, I guess I didn't want people to go through that too, because, being homeless kind of gives you this sense of insecurity, and you don't have those skills growing up. And that's one of the things I had to suffer through as well. And it made me want to be in law enforcement. And so I went through my background trying to get a degree in criminal justice, and I majored also in psychology. And my sister happened to be in a job where she was an advocate for sexual assaults. And this position opened up where it was more about being in tune with law enforcement and violent crimes. And basically, I said, sure, let's see where this goes. And from that point forward, I had a better understanding of where I wanted to be in, because I thought of myself, well, law enforcement is there after the fact, after a crime had occurred. But as advocates, you're really there to help people pick up the pieces to be able to adapt to their new lifestyle after a crime has occurred to them, overcome the trauma, and persevere. You want them to succeed in life afterwards. And I think that's one of the things that I really wanted to strive in, is being able to have people persevere in life. Because just because you're a victim of a crime doesn't mean that life ends there and that you should be stuck there. So we worked really hard in getting people back on their feet. And granted, homicide is a completely different thing. And I think in the presentation, I'll talk more about that in the presentation I've developed here. But ultimately, I believe that it's just a new life you have to live, and the trauma comes along with it. With that being said, that's the journey that I got here. And eventually I got up to Iowa City and applied for a job for a victim witness coordinator. And I am happy and privileged to be in this position to be able to help people in our county to guide them through the criminal justice proceedings. So this is the start of Chris's journey, essentially, and how I got here. That being said, I think I can share this PowerPoint. There we go. All right. So ultimately, I'll talk a little bit more on two different sides. The sides with defendants and the sides with victims. And I think the proper way that we can start this is defendants, because that's how we get through victims. So ultimately, our office is technically not the first place people come in and be able to talk about people's mental health. So we're usually kind of like the last ones, because they have to go through a series of places. So law enforcement usually deals with mental health issues as well. And for example, here in Johnson County, they have a mental health liaison. Her name is Kiana Pope. She works with the sheriff's department. I believe she's working there for a year and a half. I actually used to work for her. She took over my sister's position as an advocate with crisis intervention services. She was the sexual assault advocacy person for 2 counties. And then she came up and she got the job here in Johnson County to be able to associate that. And so part of her process is to be able to de-escalate someone from harm, because otherwise law enforcement has to treat things a different way, that could possibly lead to an officer being hurt and themselves being hurt, or even an arrest. And so Kiana's there to help mitigate some of that, provide her services to be able to reduce risk for law enforcement and themselves. Treatment centers is a way to go to. Guide Link services is one of them. A lot of the, like I said, a lot of these institutions take place before it gets to our system. And then from that point forward, and then our office prosecutes someone for breaking the law if we see fit that they broke the law at that point. So that's how that process works in our office. And from that, then we get to the point of where I come in and how victims can associate themselves to the case. Not only that, but if they never had any mental health issues, they can definitely develop mental health problems at that point. And a lot of this stuff might be a little heavy, just a forewarning. But ultimately, for example, if someone was a victim of a sexual assault, that person has to live with the fact that they have been sexually assaulted. And ultimately, new trauma comes from that. Whoops. New trauma comes from that. So ultimately, from that point forward, for example, I've had situations where people say that they're afraid of the person. They're afraid to go outside. They're afraid to meet new people. They're afraid to even talk to any man or woman. They kind of start getting depressed over what happened and become suicidal, or indicate or medicate themselves heavily using drugs or alcohol even. And so part of our process is be able to help them get connected resources in our county to be able to help them get through that situation, or at least have them talk to someone. We go through RVAP, which is a rape victim advocacy program that has been transferred to DVIP now. And ultimately, the advocates are there to help them talk to them about what happened to them, and have someone they can talk to goes a long way in dealing with that pain, dealing with that trauma. They just need to be able to express themselves at first and have that person to listen to them. And not only that, not only just listen, but validate what happened in as well. Because when we get to the criminal justice system, it could be a different thing. For example, there are situations where we may get all the way up to trial, right? They had to testify. They had to testify to strangers about what happened to them. That is more trauma on them regarding the incident itself. And it actually could be even more traumatic, because they had to live with it once. And now with the trial, they have to live through it all over again with strangers in the room, with your family and friends in the room there to support you. And then when it comes time to the verdict, jury may say not guilty. And they want to feel validated. Not only that, but now a lot of people out there saying that this person didn't do it, or this person is not guilty of these charges. So they automatically associate that this person didn't do anything to them, but in their minds, this person hurt them. This person injured them in a way that it's going to carry them through the whole lifetime, that they weren't heard, even after testimony that this occurred to them. And I think that goes a lot in mental health. And how do you push forward? I talked earlier about persevere. How do you persevere after that? How do you say, I can keep going after, like a lot of people said that that this didn't happen, that everyone validated? How on our end, how do we talk to that person afterwards? And that's what I'm getting at in like mental health situations. How, yeah, defendants come through a mental health crisis and they get through different systems before we get to our office, but then they also create mental health problems for victims who have never had mental health concerns, but now they develop some because of what happened to them through the criminal justice system. And that's why we have different type of programs. We have Crime Victims Assistance Division. The Crime Victims Assistance Division is through the Attorney General's office. It's a program that works on reimbursement. So ultimately, they're able to provide you with different types of benefits. For example, they can offer benefits up to $25,000, for example, for medical expenses, and they can even provide you with mental health counseling, travel expenses, and they're there to help victims of violent crimes. And so we often refer that to them because we want them to talk to someone. We can't push someone to talk to a mental health provider, but sometimes our insurance companies say, here's some money, but you need to have more sessions with that mental health representative that you feel comfortable talking to. And if I don't have the money to do that, maybe I don't want to do that anymore because it's costing me a lot to talk to this person. But this program is there for that purpose, to be able to help victims of violent crimes, to be able to, in this instance, talk to someone. And so that's one of the programs that our office, and one of the ones I push quite a bit, to be able to talk to people about that, because I think that's very important.
Chris, how
Yes.
how long do you typically work with a victim? Does it just vary in the situation?
It does vary, and the reason for that is just because it depends on the case itself. So, for example, um, there's so many cases, I'm trying to think of one specifically. But there are some times where, for example, there's a case, I'll just make a new one up. A case happened last week, right? And then that person, the victim, calls our office. We talk to them. We go over the procedure, what to look forward in the case. We go over the crime victims compensation. If they're a victim of a homicide, domestic abuse, or sexual assault, we provide them with the appropriate advocate as well. And then from that point forward, we just let them know to give us a call. Mostly because we want them to talk to someone, but we want them to feel safe talking to that person. So the advocates offer confidentiality. And then that's the thing that's different from our roles, is that confidentiality, that person's bound by law to have a private conversation with that person. And so they can be it can be an intimate conversation. And so that person can work with them quite a bit. In our office and how we talk to victims, our place is limited because we don't want to give that impression that we're advocates as well. So from that point forward, we have communication with victims regarding criminal cases and or the criminal activity that happens in the case itself. For example, if there's a hearing that took place where the victim has to come in for depositions, then we have communication with that victim, not only the victim, but the advocate as well. We want to make sure that the advocate's informed of that, because that can bring up more trauma about the hearing itself. So our communication with victims is limited to that degree. And so that could be up to a year or could be beyond a year. So when I said it could depend, is that, for example, in this situation, let's say the person is out for a warrant. That basically means that the case cannot proceed forward without talking to the defendant or have the defendant be through the system itself for the procedures to keep pushing forward. And so in that regard, the case could take up to three. I've had a case here recently that went up to almost 4 or 5 years. And from that point forward, we
Um,
had communication with that victim for about 5 years.
well, that's a lot. That's a long
It
time
is a lot.
for, yeah, yeah, but I could see where that would often be extended into many months, maybe many years.
But then that's part of the problem too. That keeps hurting the victim as well, because we constantly have to give them a call, right? And imagine something traumatic happened to you, and then you keep moving on with your life and you put like let's call it a band-aid. And every single time we talk to someone about, hey, this is coming to trial, you keep pulling that band-aid off and it hurts. Then let's say the case gets continued because the person has a warrant for the arrest and they're not available, or let's say the person um, got sick, or let's say the defense attorney got COVID, for example. That has happened, where cases have to be continued or trial has to be continued because of those reasons. So let's say in that regard that happens again. we're calling the victim, letting them know, pulling that band-aid again, and they're devastated because in their head they're building this up, they're building that anxiety, they're building that stress of this finally happening and be able to get past life at that point. And you just pulling the band-aid again, saying like, hey, this got continued again, and they are devastated, and they will let you know they're devastated.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions so far? Sorry, that's pretty dark. I do apologize, but that's the type of work that we do. And I think that I'm in good company here because that's the work that we all do, right? And I think the most important thing is self-care for us. So I always want to be able to let people know ahead of time that some of this conversation could be a little dark. And if you have trauma in your life, and this could be as called a vicarious trauma, please let me know. And I'd be more than happy to talk to you afterwards too, because I have a lot of training in that too. Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, I
Okay.
guess along those lines, vicarious trauma is a real thing, and you guys
Yeah.
hear some pretty devastating descriptions of crimes and situations that could, I don't know, stick with you, if you will. And do you guys have a support system and a debriefing process?
So in our office, for example, there are 4 victim witness coordinators, and we debrief within each other, mostly because I would say about 90% of the time, we frontline I want to say all the calls, but the majority of calls that include victims and cases. And we like to debrief with one another because I think that a lot of us have training in advocacy work, and we need to be able to talk about that. So in that regard, we do talk to one another about these type of cases, and we hold each other accountable to take time off if it gets to the point where we feel like we're getting burnout, because it's a real thing. And in regards to the attorneys, because the attorneys have a lot that they have to do in these cases to prepare themselves to move on with the case. It could be watching pictures of people who have died because a homicide. It could be because of a car incident that took place where someone died, for example. I'm trying to be a little bit more PG, but it could be someone recording someone being raped, unfortunately, because that has happened in our office too, where the attorneys have to watch that to be able to present that as evidence in cases for trial, and to be able to prepare the victims as well, going through that process as well, because I think that's important to be able to illustrate to the victims that this is the reason why we have to do this. So there's a lot of issues that attorneys have to face as well. And they also debrief with one another. They have meetings every week to help develop that. And then we have a program that we can go through our insurance and county, that we can talk to a mental health provider as well.
That's
So
great.
that's always a
Thank
huge
you.
plus. Of
Yeah,
course.
thank you for
Of course.
telling us about that.
Let's move on a bit. Click on the next slide. And I talked about this too. A lot of people go through the criminal justice system. And from that point forward, we are the last people that take place at that point. There's a lot of access and services that people have to be able to mitigate some of that mental health as well. Guideline services, honestly, that's, when I first started, that place came to be, and they came and present, and I thought that's the coolest thing ever, right? It was the coolest thing ever for guideline services to come in, because it's a one-stop shop for people who have, like, for example, alcohol dependency, to be able to get some help with that, or drug related too, and not end up in the system. But not only that too, but be able, well, I wouldn't say not end up in the system, but be able to have that mitigating factor to help them out, so they don't end up in the system again. And I think that's a very good point for them. And I'm glad that they're here. Mental health court. This has been in the works for a very long time. One of our attorneys, Lynn, helped mitigate some of this, and this is where people get committed. And the main goal of mental health court is be able to, and this one I can see, to me, in my personal experience, is to reduce the risky behaviors towards themselves and others. The others part is a big deal, but themselves is a greater deal as well, because we want them to be safe, and we want our community to also be safe. And I think that's a huge important part about the mental health court. And I believe Lynn has been doing this for a very long time. She had a lot of grants, a lot of work to be done to be able to establish this. And we're doing our best to make strides in mental health and how increase help for people who really do need it. And I think this has been a great opportunity. And honestly, not a lot of counties have this as well. And this is just a great opportunity for us to have this in our county. One of the ways that we also help prevent a lot of increase in crime and be able to have additional help and be proactive in crime, especially people who need it and need additional help with mental services, is our newest position, Jess. She's a community violence intervention coordinator, and she's been in her job for, God, I think it's been a year already. This is what I'm talking about. Time moves really, really fast, and she's been great. She has an office away from our office to have the community be more engaged with her than to be scared, because some people just are scared of being involved with law enforcement. That's just the general fact. And so her office is not looking in our building to be able to be part of the community and have them approach her too. She's very proactive, and she is great to work with. And this is more of a rounded approach to be able to help people out, to have them prevent crime. So this is targeting people who are more at risk. For example, let's say teenagers. We want teenagers to succeed and not commit crimes. And sometimes they have, that's the reason why I talk about my upbringing a little bit, because when, I guess in my situation, like I had to learn a lot of social skills in life later in life. And sometimes when you're, not wealthy or don't have a home, you could develop some social aspects and have some mental health problems too. And I believe that she does a very good job in making sure that they're successful in life afterwards and not be able to be in trouble with law enforcement. So she does a very good job and be able to do that with the community. And then, so this is a lot of stuff that she does. She does outreach. She focuses on deterrence, and then be able to change their lifestyles. I know she told me a story one time where it was freezing outside, and she went out and be able to get them like a furnace or something so they can stay warm. And that gesture may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but for someone who is in dire need of help, that goes a long way. And not only that, but that builds trust between that family and Jess and that coordinator and the things that we're trying to shape. Because also how this program spreads is word of mouth, and be able to have that family talk to other families about like, oh, you know what? I know this person, Jess, she's been helping with my son, and my son has had some problems with school, mental health, and she's been assisting him in trying to get education assistance, trying to get them a job, fill out employment, and be able to get for some reason I blanked out, a resume, and try and get a resume. Or it could be along the lines of, we haven't had housing, she's helping us do housing, or we don't have any food, she's hooking us up with resources around the area that can get us food pantry, and other services like that that help us succeed in life. A lot of that stuff goes along the lines of being better to equip yourself with the necessities and be able to focus on other stuff afterwards. And I think that goes a long way, the things that she's doing in this county. And I believe that we are a year in, and things are going to change for the better in the future and reduce crime in the same process. And I guess one of the things I did not talk about is my job specifically. So I'm in charge of reaching out to all the victims and illustrating to them what their rights are. So they have a right to do what is called be registered with Iowa Vine. Iowa Vine is a program through the United States, with the exception of 2 or 3 states. Ultimately, uh, they can be registered with the system to get notifications of the jail. When someone gets bonded out, it'd be nice to know that that person is being bonded out, and it gives me a sense of insecurity or security, depends on who you are, but be able to provide yourself with a safety plan, because I think that goes a long way. For example, people who have been victims of domestic abuse, that person may be released, and that person might be coming back to hurt me because I press charges. For example, I want to be able to feel safe. And so from our office, not only did I just refer you to an advocate, I signed up for Iowa Vine. So between the three of us, we kind of created a semi pseudo safety plan, and the advocate at that point forward take it from that point to be able to provide even more services to create a fundamental safety plan so they're safe. And so when we talked about a person dealing with trauma, victims have a right to do what is called a victim impact statement. And so people can write victims can write statements directly to the judge as to how this has impacted them, caused them trauma, um, hurt their family, hurt their friends, depends on the situation itself. I'll give you an example. We had someone being prosecuted for an assault that took place. It was a willful injury. That person got punched in the face a couple of times, and that one punch knocked him out. He was still standing. When you're falling, when you're conscious, you brace yourself. This person wasn't conscious to brace himself, so he fell face first and busted his whole face. Around that area, there were friends that he was hanging out with who saw this altercation take place, and there was just a pool of blood everywhere. These friends were friends with his sister as well, and they were sending messages that their brother was just killed. Now, if I heard that myself, I would be very, very, very scared. I'd be traumatized of what I just read, and I honestly wouldn't know what to do at that point. And so hearing that, that person was traumatized. And during his victim impact statement, he told the judge that. And it was an important thing the judge to hear because police reports don't have those feelings in there. They just have the facts about the case and how to proceed forward with the charges itself. But victims are able to illustrate to the judge at sentencing after someone has been found guilty of a crime or they pled guilty of the crime to tell the judge how they feel about the whole case. I can't remember, was it Joanna? You asked me how much involvement we have with victims. I said a year. Sometimes these cases can take up to a year. And so the person has to deal with this for a full year after the fact. And also the injuries that that person had caused them, they have to live with that too. In this specific scenario, the person had to get reconstructive surgery around his jaw, and the way he fell, he like, well, that's graphic, but he had to get surgery to correct his face because he looked like a different person. So he had to explain that to the judge, and the judge took that into consideration. Sometimes judges take consideration what the victim impact statements are to kind of rule what the person's sentencing is. So that's what a victim impact statement is. It's just basically a right that victims have to explain to the judge how they feel about the case and how this has caused them trauma. That being said, they're also entitled to restitution. In that specific scenario, that person needed surgery. And so not only does crime victim compensation help with that surgery, also if there's any additional money that crime victims compensation didn't cover, that's something they can ask for restitution as well to make them whole, because otherwise that debt falls on them. They're liable to pay that back. And so the person who caused this specific incident is able to pay the victim back for the damage caused to them because of the crime they committed in regards to the hospital bills. In this particular case, this person would have gotten probation or got sent to prison. He got probation in this case, and so this person can also be registered with the Department of Corrections. Essentially, how I was able to give information about the case throughout the whole year, the Department of Corrections gave you information as well to him when he gets off probation, just to keep him on the loop of what's going up next after this specific part ended and the next part commences with the Department of Corrections. And then that is the stuff that we do. That's part of the parts we do. We assign yourself to cases. And like I said, we all have different backgrounds as well. Sometimes I'll give you an example in that too. A person who was an officer for 22 years is one of our victim witness coordinators here too. And she's had a lot of interactions with the public. She used to be a teacher as well, so she knows a lot of people. Sometimes when there's a domestic abuse situation, she'll give me one of those, or she'll give me a case because it's one of her old students and she doesn't want to be involved in that. She wants to be separating herself from that. And so this is how we take care of each other. This is the reason why we talk to one another about cases like this. And so we'll pass cases along so we feel comfortable talking to them too. So that's part of the things that we do. We do our best to have a huge impact in their processes in regards to any criminal case, because like I said, and this is probably the most important part, I know this to be my job, but it's their life. And I want to make sure that I'm able to be kind, respectful, and treat them with dignity and be able to answer their questions and guide them through the criminal justice process, because I think that I owe it to them. I've been doing this for a very long time. I deeply care about people, and I'll let them know at the end of the case, I mean this in the kindest way possible. I never want to see you again. Because if I see you again, that means something happened. And it usually happens in domestic abuse cases. And we really do try our best to make sure that they are treated that way. They are treated with respect and dignity. Does anybody have questions about that?
I guess, I always think about the way people stereotype folks with serious mental illness as also being violent. And, what we always say is people with mental illness are more likely to become victims of
Yep.
violence than they are to perpetrate it. Um, and certainly that's been your experience. Do you, I know Laura's on the line. I always call on you, Laura, don't I? Um, and she works with she's our peer services manager, and she sees a lot of different people with a lot of different issues. She and her staff, and some of them are victims of violence or crime, certainly. Um, but she also probably would like to make sure that our office, our peer services and your offices are connected, in that your clients, for lack of a better term, might benefit from some of our peer services and being connected to people who have similar experiences, or would have lived experience, and would be able to help them
Mhm.
on kind of a continual basis. I'm not sure, Laura. I just, I'm wondering how we can make sure our peer support services are connected to Chris's office, in that, you know, certainly some of the victims of violence who have mental health challenges could benefit from some of our services ongoing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, having our information like brochures, business cards, flyers, so people are aware. And then I'm always open to phone calls, like if someone is interested in getting peer support but doesn't know what it is, I'm happy to walk them through what it's like over the phone and see if, our remote services would be a good fit, or coming into the center might be an option for them. So I think that's a great opportunity there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do here, us victim witness coordinators have a meeting every Thursday morning. Usually lasts, could be an hour, could be half an hour, depending on our court schedule. Sometimes it could be a couple hours. But one of the things that we're focusing on here soon is being able to have those meetings with our other providers to come in and talk to us about how we can improve our services and how we can better help our the victims going through our process. And here coming up, we have on the 26th, we have Waypoint Services, which is an advocacy group from Lynn County. They deal with domestic and housing, shelter, and homicide services. Coming in and talk to us more about their services as well. So it could be one of those things where I can reach out to you and have you come in and talk to us more about what things that you do. Um, I'm trying this is my way of doing outreach. We don't have the time sometimes to do outreach, and so this is the opportunity that we're trying to do to seek more opportunities to have people come in and talk to us about that. So I would love to have your contact information, and then be able to provide that opportunity for you to come and talk to us. There could be
Absolutely.
a
Yeah, I'd be
possibility of
happy to
having
connect
breakfast pizza
and
as well. So just putting that out there.
yeah,
Chris,
I'll drop my email in the chat, Chris. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, I also work with Laura, and I am the program coordinator of our place. And we would very much like to be a part of the Thursday at some point to collaborate with you, because we very much work with the officers,
Okay.
and many of our clients are all drop into our center with mental health issues. A lot of them are dealing with criminal issues as well. And we have collaborated with the legal system. And all the things that you are talking about are very relevant to our peers that we work with. So we're very excited to join you at this topic today. And that you're speaking to NAMI about this today. So I very much appreciate everything that you're saying, and I look forward to talking to you later about what you're doing in Johnson
Good,
County.
thanks.
So thank
I
you.
really am happy to do this. I in my other job, I love doing outreach. In this job, I don't have the time to do that anymore because there's 4 of us, which means there's a lot of cases going through our office and all hands on deck type of situation. But I've been wanting to have more outreach possibilities to have people come in and talk to us instead.
Hi, Chris. I also work at our place. My name's Leanne,
Nice to meet you.
and nice to meet you. I love this. We've had 2 people with major problems that have never been referred by law enforcement, and then their lawyers have dropped them after their problems. So I really think it's more than outreach that we need between your office and our office, because our place, I don't even know if you even know we're here. Spoke about GuideLink, and we are on Gilbert Street. You know where
Kennedy Plaza.
Gumby's Pizza is and Kennedy Plaza there?
Yep.
We are there, and we would love to have you come in because we can maybe have a couple people just talk to you, and we can see how next time we can do it better.
Yeah.
Because we
I
would
love
love
that.
to be
Yeah,
part of
if, like I said, if you can give me your contact information, I can pass it to the group and then we can schedule that out.
Okay, great. We will do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Let's get, let him finish. I'm anxious to see the following slides. I'm so surprised at all the various ways people come to you, as defendants, as victims, it's quite an amazing task to handle all that.
I think my biggest, I've been here for 5 years, and my biggest challenge, and I said this, I'm an interview here. They asked me, what would be the hardest part of this job for you? And I told them, it'd be going to a brand new county, not knowing who the resources are. Because how can you better serve the people in your community if you don't know those resources? And you're right. I did not know that place existed. And I'm happy to collaborate with you and talk to you and have you talk to us more about the things that you do to better serve the people in our community. Because I think that goes a long way. And not only the type of job that we all do, but I think that sometimes not knowing, we don't give them the best, even though you feel like you're doing the best. Sometimes you feel like when you learn about this agency after the fact, you're like, oh, well, next time, and that kind of sometimes bums me out. But that to me, that was always the hardest challenge, and getting this new job and being able to learn my resources. And over the 5 years I've been working here, or for almost 5 years working here now, I've learned quite a bit. And I feel better equipped to talk to the people here in our county to better serve them better. And I think that goes a long way in the job that we do. But here are some of the agencies that we work with victim support. And then honestly, that was pretty much it. I know you're curious to see what the other sides were, but we're basically almost done. Does anybody else have any questions for me right now?
So do you have a specific age range that you work with? I mean, do juveniles get in, do they go through a different process? Are you 18 and older? What's the cutoff?
So okay, that's a very good question. And it could be pseudo complicated. It depends on the time, the crime itself. And also it depends on what the attorney believes that person needs. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. Me as a victim witness coordinator, if anybody gets charged with a crime, and I get a hold of them, I'm always talking to that person. Maybe not the juvenile directly, only because they need to have their parent, or if their parent's not available, we have a guardian ad litem. Basically means they have an attorney assigned to them to view in the best interest of that child going through the criminal justice system. That is one way where I'm always communicating with people who are underage. All right. However, there is another, we have 2 attorneys to deal with the juvenile processes as well. We don't typically bridge that too much. And the reason for that is because they go through a different system, and there's a different person associated with that can help and guide them through that process as well. Because it mostly could be depending on that type of charge. So how that sometimes bridges over is, let's say that this person was being picked on at school, and this is a case that we could have, for example, it's just an example, but this person's getting picked on at school, like a bullying, but it escalated because that person brought a weapon this one time. And so from that point forward, it kind of bridges the gap. And so that means I'm able to have communication with that parent as well. And also bring in Jess, who is our preventive victims coordinator, and be able to help prevent that from happening. Because with bullying, that can mean that we have retaliation. So the kids can retaliate on each other and kind of build that up a little bit more. So in that retrospect, that's how we kind of bridge that and how have an involvement of that. But we do have other people who are able to work with those juveniles as well in that process, that doesn't, that the crime is not escalated too much. I'm sure that makes sense.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yep.
So tell me more about Rudy and how he gets involved.
Okay. I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but in the background, here are my plants, but right above that frame is a picture of Rudy. So this is Rudy sitting in my seat. So Rudy is a therapy dog. And when we have, what's that? A crisis response. And so when we have victims come in who are afraid of testifying or doing depositions or meeting with us, Rudy is there. The whole office loves him, and then they're able to have an opportunity to talk with the dog as well. And I think Rudy does a very good job. He's very popular in Johnson County. He goes to almost every single presentation, and they're able to meet Rudy. And Rudy also has his own trading cards with his information on it as well.
That's great. How old is Rudy?
Oh, that's a good question. I think he is 3. But Alyssa is Detective Alyssa Schreier. She's the one in charge of Rudy, and they're a great pair. And everybody's always happy to see Rudy and Alyssa come in. I think they might be at the fair next week. If anybody sees them, just say hi to them.
Any other questions, folks? Thanks all for coming. I think we made some good connections too. Well, as I told you, Chris, this is recorded and it'll be on our YouTube channel. And also because of this connection we made, the sheriff is going to be offering some topics too for us later on this
good.
year. Yeah. Yep.
Good.
And as
hopefully
Mary,
you get to meet Rudy then too.
yeah, we get to meet Rudy then. Right. And as Mary Lou just said in her message, she really thinks the work you do is great. And I echo that. Thank you so much. It's really important work.
Thank you. There used to be a time where I would shy away from talking about what I do because people would tell me, well, how do you do that? And, I think it's important work, and it's not just important work, but I think it's you have to be that type of person to be able to do that type of work. And that's the reason why we're all here, because we can do that work.
Yeah.
Because it does take that special person.
Right.
Mhm.
Indeed.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.